In this amazing video, we will log on to the Google Cloud using the account you've already created, and we will create a virtual machine. We will log into Canvas, and we will provide proof of our success. Using Chrome as our browser, not some other browser, we will open console.cloud.google.com. Your landing page will not look like mine, but we can still navigate together. If you go to billing, you should see a billing account that you created when you redeemed your coupon. It should look something like this. Your credits will be $50, not $100. And otherwise it should be pretty much the same. Once you've verified that, we're going to go to Compute Engine from the hamburger menu. That's the 3 horizontal bars in the upper left-hand corner of the page. In Compute Engine, we will select VM instances, and we should get a welcome message because there are no VM instances in this, let's, for lack of a better word, say project. Actually, that is the right word. So let's say create. And you also are encouraged to take the quick start and browse through the instructions, but you don't have to do that to follow along with me. So we'll say create. And you'll get something like this if you already have a project created. Now, you probably don't have a project created. So what you're going to do is open the project dialog, which is towards the top in the blue bar, and you'll see that in my project field I have a project called NICHOLDW Practice VM. When you open that dialog, you probably won't have any projects here, but you will have the new project button, so click on that and type in the name of a project. Make sure that it's got your 6+2 in it, and I think it has to be unique across the entire Google Cloud if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong about that. But I use dashes to separate words, and I don't think it supports uppercase letters, so I usually leave those out. There are some fields in the Google Cloud environment that don't support uppercase letters, some fields that don't support spaces. So I've developed a habit of just using dashes to separate words and keeping most things in lowercase. Once you've entered the project name, click Create. Wait a moment, and now you get the Create an Instance page. So when we selected computing engines and then VMs, this is where we end up once we've selected a project. And if you look at my project list, I've got a bunch of projects here. At the very top you can see the one I just created with you. Below that was one I created earlier. It doesn't matter which one I use. They're both tied to the same billing account. It doesn't matter which one you use because you only have one billing account, and at this point you probably only created one project. We have to do a little bit of waiting now and then. We are computing in the cloud. There's a lot of things going on. There are a lot of things going on in the cloud, somewhere in a Google data center. The hamster wheels are turning. The computing functions are going crazy. And I am going to pause this video for a moment so you don't have to watch this spin. Eventually, the compute engine fires up. It's probably a 4-cylinder diesel and it takes a moment to get warm. That's a nerd joke for you engine gearheads. And we can create a VM. So we can click on create. I also encourage you to review the quick start. If you need help, you get stuck somewhere, that's a good place to go to look for some hints. I am going to just plow through it because I've done this before. Click on create to create a VM instance. Again, wait a while, not quite as long. The instance here's an example where the instance name cannot have uppercase letters, and I don't think it can have spaces either. No, it can't. We use dashes to separate words and we put everything in lowercase. As I said earlier, that's a habit I've pretty much gotten into with the Google Cloud because there are some places where you can't use spaces and can't use uppercase letters, and some places you can, and it just gets too hard to differentiate. So there's my name. I used my 6+2 and I put a VM at the end just to make it a little clearer. And I could make this practice, but give it some descriptive name. And this is naming things as a skill that you develop over time. And over time you will look back on your names that you've given to things and think, what was I thinking when I did that? So don't beat yourself up over the names. Just know that over time you will get better at it and your style will change, and you will probably have guidelines and rules to follow at your place of employment anyway. And it's important to follow those guidelines if you're given them so everybody knows what you're doing, and you can pick up other people's work and they can pick up your work. In this particular case, we're just going to create a big whopper Windows Server virtual machine because we can. And I'm going to pick, how about 4 CPUs, 15 gigabytes of memory. Now I'd like to scroll all the way to the bottom and just pick the biggest whopper machine I can. But if you do that, you will find it will get rejected at some point because there are quota limits on what you can do depending on the server farm in the cloud that you are using. We won't do that. 4 CPUs, 15 gig of RAM. I guess these days that approximates an expensive mobile phone. And then the default boot image is Linux. We're going to change that. We're going to select Windows Server. The more expensive virtual machines will be running Windows. They're going to cost you more out of your $50 credit. You're not going to use the entire $50 for this assignment, trust me. So we can grab a lot of resources that we normally wouldn't do. When you are computing in the cloud and you are paying for resources, it is still much, much cheaper than buying hardware and installing it in your office and paying upkeep and maintenance and service and repair. It is much cheaper to do things in the cloud. Now, I'm not spending a lot of time worrying about finances here because you have a $50 credit. I know you're not going to use all of it for this assignment, but in the real world, I would be very careful to pick the minimal hardware configuration that I thought I needed in order to get the job done. We'll pick Windows Server. We've got a whole bunch of choices. To make it easy, scroll all the way to the bottom and select Windows Server 2019 Data Center. We can go all the way back to Windows Server 2012. The versions of Windows also have an effect on what you will pay. So again, we don't care about that right now. 50 gig is probably enough, but what the heck, let's make it 100. Again, that would make the price go up. You're charged by the hour, the CPU hour, I believe, but we don't care. All right, we've got a configuration. We want to do a couple more things. We want to allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic. I'm not going to go into the details of everything that we're doing, but just check those boxes and follow along with me. Review. We have a name for our VM. I named mine my 6+2-VM-practice. It lives in a region and a zone. Those are going to be driven by where you are geographically and also what kind of resources you think you're going to need. Do not change those. Somewhere in a cornfield in Iowa is a data center surrounded by cows and sheep, and that is where our virtual machine will reside. We created a 4 CPU, 15 gigabyte hunk of hardware. We selected allow HTTP traffic and allow HTTPS traffic. We're not going to change anything else. We will click create. It drops you into this screen, which is an inventory of all your VM instances. If you had more than one, it would show up here. The VM takes a moment to get started. I'm going to pause the video and sing a song while this gets going. After some waiting and some song singing, you should get this screen where there is a green check mark next to the VM. That means it's been created. It also means it's running. If you click on the context menu, you will see start, stop, reset, delete, view network details, new machine image, and view logs, and you will notice that start is dimmed out. The VM is currently running. You are currently being billed for it. Don't freak out. The billing is minimal at this point. When you want to stop it, you can select stop. You can also shut down the operating system from the VM itself. That works the same way. But before you go to bed, make sure you shut it down, because as long as it's running, even if you aren't connected to it, it will be billing you. It's a habit that you have to get into when you're doing cloud computing, is to turn off your machine when you are not using your machine. Otherwise, you will be billed for it. Okay, we're ready to connect to it now. Remember, we are in Chrome. If you're not in Chrome, you need to start over and do all this in Chrome. All you have to do is click Rdp. If you haven't installed the Rdp plugin or extension for Chrome, at that point it will ask you to install that extension. You should go ahead and do that. I've already done that. When I click on Rdp, it will launch another window. And then it will think. The reason you get this message, Chrome could not connect, please try again, is because it has not completely started up yet. It's a little misleading. The thing is still booting somewhere in the cloud, so you're not going to get a login screen yet. But that's okay. I just wanted to show you that. You can close that Rdp window. Now, another thing you're going to want to do before you can log in is click on the VM itself to bring up the configuration page. And click on Set Windows Password, because once you do get the Rdp screen loaded, you will be at a login dialog, but you won't know the password. If you click Set New Windows Password, you can click Set, and you can click past this warning because changing the password on a server OS does cause loss of data. It's a security issue. So that is a warning they provide to you to remind you that, hey, if you've been using this machine, you may lose something by changing the password. Click Set. It does a little bit of thinking for you. And it creates a new password for you, which is unguessable, very secure. And you can click the copy button to copy that password rather than trying to memorize it or write it down. Or you can enter a new password into this field that you won't forget. It's up to you. I click copy. And you're going to have to store that somewhere. You can't memorize that. So pasting it into Notepad or writing it down, or unless you're Sheldon Cooper and have an eidetic memory, you're not going to remember it. So copy that, click close, hit the back arrow button. Let's go back to the inventory screen and let's try to connect to this VM again. So we're going to click on RDP. The RDP window opens. This time we get a dialog, which is great. That means the VM is completely booted up. You are being charged right now. Don't panic, it's not a lot. It comes out of your credits, but you are being charged. And I will keep harping on that because it's a habit you have to build. You can paste the password in. You can leave the domain blank. It populates the username for you. I think it uses the prefix of your email address as your username. Click OK. You get a certificate error. Certificates are third-party ways of verifying that a website or a server is who it claims to be. Our little server does not have a certificate that is valid, so we get this error because Chrome cannot validate who this server says it is. Don't worry about that either. Click continue. You're going to get a little desktop. Now I have a problem because this little desktop will not resize. Okay, this is the Chrome Rdp extension. It has some kind of shortcoming, and while it does give me a desktop, it's a little bit difficult to maneuver because it's little teeny and there is no way to resize it that I'm aware of. So if you get this, you have a problem. Most of you will get a nice big browser window and it will look terrific and you'll have a desktop that you can work with. But that is an issue that I have on this machine that needs to be addressed. If I change the resolution of the screen, my native desktop, it should fix this. And you may have to do the same thing, or you may have to go to another computer if you have this problem. But at this point, you have created the virtual machine and you have logged into it. And there's only a couple more things you need to do. And I will be detailing those in the assignment in Canvas. So consider yourself successful to this point. If you are going to continue on with the assignment, you can leave the VM running. If you're not going to continue with the assignment at this time, if you're going to come back later, remember to shut down the VM, and that is accomplished very easily by clicking Start and then Shut Down. Again, that is the same thing as doing it from the Google Cloud Console. You can shut it down from here and you will not be billed for it anymore, or you can shut it down from the console page. I'm going to click Shut Down, and then you can leave this as Other, click Continue. That turns off the VM, and I'm going to refresh this page. Waiting for the page to refresh. It's still not quite refreshed. It hasn't populated start or stop in the VM inventory menu. You can see the wheel turning here next to the VM. It's still deciding what to do. If I hover over the wheel, it says the instance is being stopped, which is good. So when we shut down the machine, the Google Cloud realized that machine is no longer running and it's setting it into a stopped state. At this point then you can restart it. When it resumes in a steady state, you can restart it. You can continue on with your work, or you can come back to it tomorrow, secure in the knowledge that you are not being billed until you start it again. Thank you.